Hi everyone, I'm Stephane Budo. I'm an Azure MVP, and today I've got here with me Marc Kean. And Marc, what do you do?
I'm another Azure MVP.
No kidding.
I'm not, I'm exactly the same as you.
And who do you work for?
Vigilant IT, and who do you work for?
Vigilant IT. Yes.
Surprise, surprise.
That's why I saw you in the, anyway, moving on. So today I got Marc over here to talk to us about some big hole that we found in
Massive
Azure.
hole.
That's right, in Azure ASM. But tell us more, Marc. What is that?
Okay, so last year, at the end of 2015, we're talking about October time frame.
Yep.
CSP came out to Australia, and as you can tell by the accent, I'm from Australia, and CSP is that licensing program from Microsoft, and CSP is also based on Azure ARM, which is Azure Resource Manager. It doesn't touch Azure Service Manager, ASM, the classic, at all. So October last year is when it came out to the Australian data centres. This is ARM, was released, and then straight away the CSP licensing came about, and all of a sudden people then that took out CSP licensing with Azure were stuck, because if they had virtual machines on ASM, well, the CSP licensing didn't make use of those virtual machines.
Right.
And so they had to, it wasn't a quick call to Microsoft support and say, hey, can you please flick my region across to this CSP subscription?
Right.
Can't do it because it's completely separate architecture altogether. Azure Resource Manager is like complex.
Gone.
And then ASM is a little bit more like a bubble. I like to think about it as an exploding big bang, because literally it opens up a little ball into masses of little pieces like this. So what we've got here is a script which we've put together, which takes care of the whole entire process of migrating virtual machines from ASM to ARM.
Oh,
from
wow.
Start to finish.
So
100%, like you pretty much put your details in, your credentials, subscriptions, and let it go, and does the rest.
Okay, and that's within your subscription, right?
Well, yes, you can do within your subscription, but you don't have to. You also have the ability to go across subscription to another subscription.
Oh, wow.
Or the way Azure works, you've got subscriptions, you've got tenants, and the tenant can have multiple subscriptions underneath. So you could go from, say, one subscription in one tenant to another subscription in another tenant. And it would
even across regions?
Across regions and everything else.
So I can migrate any virtual machine ASM from my subscription down in Sydney to your subscription out in US, Northeast.
UK, Japan,
anyway.
India, wherever.
Wow, okay, that's impressive.
Yeah, as long as your subscription supports that region, which most of them do, then you can pretty much go wherever you want. There's no limitations to that respect.
Fantastic. Shall we have a look?
Yeah, let's take a look.
Yeah, all right.
All right, so here we have the old portal in Azure, or it could be the current portal, or whichever you want to call it. And currently, as you can see, I've got one VM running here. It's currently a nano server, and this is what I'm going to use for my demonstrations. And the reason why I'm using nano server is because it's got a smaller disk, only to speed up the process for the copy process.
But you can migrate anything.
Any
like a
VM.
SQL server, an Exchange server, whatever you want.
Whatever you want.
Excellent.
Because it looks at the IaaS level, it doesn't look at what's running inside of the VM. So it literally copies the disk across. You could be running like your own Bitcoin farm or anything you want inside of that virtual machine. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even go to that detail. It just grabs the disk and copies it across, and that's it.
So just a quick question then. If I've got a very complex 3-tier environment, websites as part of a cloud service with a SQL database in the back end, how does that handle it? What if I just move one web server?
Good question. So what happens then is if you've got a massive complex environment inside the same cloud service, generally that cloud service would be part of the same availability set.
Right.
Or you could have multiple cloud services, part of like the same virtual network, for example.
Of course, yep.
The way we tackle it is quite simple. If you've got one virtual machine, part of a cloud service, and you've got other virtual machines in the same cloud service, you simply select one of the virtual machines inside of the cloud service. The script will intelligently see that, okay, you've not only got this one virtual machine in the cloud service, you've got other virtual machines inside of the cloud service.
Yep.
It'll basically grab all of those machines and move the whole cloud service as an entity.
Right.
Actually not move, it'll take a snapshot of the details or the metadata, it'll go and create a target environment. And if there's a VNet attached to the cloud service, because remember with ASM you don't need a VNet, but most of the time that people would have a VNet, the VNet details will be grabbed and captured as like an inventory process, and those details will be all taken across and populated in ARM.
Right, that's fantastic. All right, let's go back to it.
Let's go back to it. Okay, so here's my virtual machine here. It's NanoServe. If we take a look, it's running in Australia East at the moment. If we go into it, we can see it's got, it's only a small VM. The virtual network is there. It's part of a subnet which is called default. Now, if we go to PowerShell and have a look at, because it is NanoServe, we can't remote desktop to this machine. So the best way to get to this machine is by running remote PowerShell.
Remote session, yep.
So what we'll do, we'll go to the front here and grab the DNS name for it, which is cloudapp.net. Well, if I can highlight it properly.
Almost.
You know what?
Almost
I'll
there.
grab that.
That's it.
And I'll manually
add the character.
I'll add the V in later. All right, so here we go here. So we've got our server name and we're going to connect to this machine using remote PowerShell.
Okay.
Wait for that to connect. And what we've done previously is created a directory onto this server. So we've, similar to what any demo does, is we do something on the source and then we check it on the target just to prove there's no smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, exactly right.
So now we're connected. Now we're connected to the machine, remote PowerShell. You can see down here. So if I run this line here, 45, you can see the directory listing. And what I've got here is, you can notice there's a directory here called Channel 9 Migration,
absolutely.
Just for this purpose.
Just for that.
And as well as all the other default directories. So that's, as you know, like when you create a Windows machine, you'd never get that directory created. We've done
that's
that,
right.
we've created that directory.
Yes.
So what we're going to do now is go forward through the script and kick it off.
Okay.
All right. So the first question it's going to ask us is, are the source and target subscription the same?
Yep.
Which we can go across subscriptions or we can go within the same. So let's make it really, really tricky and let's go no to this question.
Okay.
So it's going to go across to another subscription altogether. Yep. Now this question here is, do you use the same logon account to access both subscriptions? So in other words, is the subscription within the same tenant or is it in different tenants?
Different tenants, yeah.
So if I hit
in this case
no here,
right?
I'm telling it that basically it wants to ask me two sets of credentials, one for the source and one for the target. So I'm going to sort of put in the source credentials now. Wait for that to go through. Put in my password. Okay, so this is the source credentials for the source subscription. Okay, now it's going to ask me for the target.
The targets, of course.
Let's put them in just quickly and select this one here. Okay, password really quickly. Okay, so it's taken the source credentials and the target credentials.
Right.
Now the next thing it's going to do is the next step in the process, the next logical step is it's going to say, all right, I've got your source credentials. Here are your source subscriptions that you've got access to with those credentials in Azure. So all right, it's made it really easy for me. I'm going to select one of them. So there we go. I'll select my subscription where the VM is. And now it's going to do the opposite. It's going to say, right, all right, it's going to go to the target. It's going to use the target credentials and grab a list of all the target subscriptions those credentials have got access to. So yeah, again, I select the target subscription, and again, this is a completely separate tenant altogether. So I click OK to that. It's taken all that information. So now what it's going to do is the next logical step is go ahead and grab a list of all the ASM Classic virtual machines on the source subscription.
Right, so that's now when it checks, is it part of a cloud service and do I need to grab everything else?
Well, it'll do that one step after.
Okay.
So it'll go ahead and display all the virtual machines. So here it's got all the virtual machines displaying, which is similar to what you saw before in the portal. So over here, you can see the cloud service and you can see all the VMs listed. So I can literally select one of these VMs. I don't have to actually type the VM name in. I don't have to worry about the cloud service name.
Just
it's so easy. I just simply select the virtual machine on ASM and go Okay. And now what it's going to do is going to go back to Azure and grab an inventory around that source virtual machine. So it's grab the information about it, and it's going to see that, okay, that virtual machine is part of a cloud service. Has it got any other VMs part of that same cloud service? If it does, capture the information. Also capture information like, for example, the virtual network that it's part of, any other information.
All the resources,
so the availability set, pretty much everything, all the inventory, that data you need to go ahead and successfully create a replica in ARM.
Fantastic.
All right, so if we go across here, the next question it's going to ask us here is, would you like to migrate the VMs across to another Azure region? So, you know what, we can go across regions. So let's go yes to this. And the next question here. What
region, of course?
Well, we've got all these to choose from. So let's go somewhere fairly new. The 2 UK data centres opened up just recently. So let's select UK South. So currently, if you remember, the virtual machine is currently in Australia East, and we're going to move it within to the UK.
Just
very,
like
very
that.
easily and across subscriptions. So here it's asking us for the next logical step, which is, all right, give us a target resource group.
Okay.
So I've given it the source
because it's
details.
going to create that, of course.
Exactly. So we can either type an existing one in, or we can create a new one. So let's create a new one. I always do today's date in reverse and put like that at the end.
Okay.
So there it goes, and it
Create
confirms.
the resource group.
It's going to ask me a few questions if I want to power up the VM after the copy process. So now it goes ahead and goes and creates the. It's shutting down the VM now. It does a few other things as well. It goes and creates the resource group and other things like that. So
just to interrupt you there, you said quickly it shuts down the VM. Why is that?
Okay, so there's a few ways of doing this. We can either we can actually do it in such a way so there's no downtime. Now, if we did that and there's no downtime, let's say you're running SQL, and the SQL server is running transactions, and then you take a copy of that virtual machine and while it's still running, and essentially a point of time copy, and then you fire that up on ARM. Like all of a sudden, it's not going to be the same. It's going to be out of date.
That's right.
And so, the more we looked at it, I thought, well, you know what? The benefit being is you're going to have an exact replica of what's in the source to the target. And so if we shut that virtual machine down, it means it's shut down. We can get exclusive access to the disk. We can take a copy of it and shoot it up to ARM.
And you're not touching the source virtual machine
Not touching the source virtual machine.
So you can always go back to your source without any trouble.
Yep, we're simply shutting it down.
Yep.
And it's just left there in a shutdown. In ASM, it's still got the same cloud service there. It's still got the same storage. In fact, it's even got the same disks there as well.
Perfect. All right. So where are we up to?
All right, where we're up to right now is it's going ahead and starting to do the copy process, which means if we have a look at the target environment, this is a target environment here, and it's a completely separate tenant. If we hit refresh here, we're expecting to see a new resource group. So there it is there. Yep. If you have a look, pay close attention to the location, it's UK
South.
It's in the
UK, fantastic.
And this is where we selected originally. So if we go into here now and have a look at the resource group and have a look at the resources in here, you can see that there's one resource in here so far, which is the storage account.
Storage, of course.
Which is what it's doing now. It's copying the disk across. If you have a look at the speed, it's actually quite fast. It's megabytes per second.
Right.
And it will actually climb up. And because it's nano server, this process doesn't take that long at all.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So what we can do is go into this storage account while we're waiting, and we can break into it by clicking on, say, blobs. Now, you never used to be able to do this with the old portal.
I know, right? That is a fantastic feature of the new portal.
It's great. I mean, the fact you can go in and have a look at all your blobs in here, and this here is a container. So we can go into here and we can see our disk. Now, that's not big at all.
No.
That's like 8 gigs in size.
That's nano for
It's
you.
the total size.
That's right. That's fantastic.
Yeah, versus 127 on another VM.
Absolutely.
So that's the reason why we're using nano server for this demonstration. So otherwise, we'd be here all day waiting for the disk to copy across.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So rather than being here all day for the disk to copy across, we can be here for
So while
a short
this
time.
goes, I've got another question.
Yes.
Now, in the new portal, you now have this magic button that says move, and you can move any resource from where to where.
Right.
Is that the same as this?
Okay. All right. So let me explain a bit about that. So there's 2 things here. So there is a button that I've seen in the portal, and you click on Move, but that's moving a resource. Now that's moving a resource part of ARM, because Azure Resource Manager. However, because we're moving from ASM, they're essentially not technically resources. They're more.
Of course.
You know what? I didn't even know what they are. They're part of a cloud service. They're separate. It's a separate technology altogether and separate platform. And so there's no option in the portal to go move and select one of the resources. Now the other part to this is there are other tools, I think, that Microsoft's got where you can actually move a VM with no downtime.
That's correct, yeah.
From say one subscription to another. However, you're limited to the same tenant, so you can't move the VM.
So you can't go from one tenant
like
to
we're
another.
doing here. So if you've got like an MSDN subscription, for example, which you've got through, say, Visual Studio Enterprise or Ultimate subscription, for example, you might get it through our MVP package, for example. And then you've got like another subscription through Work, or maybe you've got another subscription you're using through pay-as-you-go, whatever. And if you want to move like your VM across, well, you can't do it because it's a separate tenant altogether.
Right.
And this is where this comes in handy.
But this can do it.
Exactly.
Excellent.
So let's take a look. Let's go back and have a look.
Oh,
so
the copy is done.
Yeah, the copy process is done. So if we go to the portal and have a look, back to it, we'll close down a few of these blades and go back.
They do tend to proliferate, don't they?
They do. Now, what's going to happen now is if I keep hitting the refresh button, I should gradually see more and more resources just magically pop up. So what's happened here, the storage account was the first logical resource to create. Then it's done the virtual network because it needs that before it puts other things in like the PIP, the NIC, and obviously there's all the dependencies. So the VM is dependent on the NIC is dependent on the PIP, and so forth. And so we've also got a public IP address as well in here. So if I keep hitting refresh,
we should see more and more resources coming through as it comes.
Yeah, so we're just going through here, doing the rest of it, and we're not far off. It literally takes all that information and goes and creates all the resources no matter what. It literally takes care of everything.
I mean, when you think about it, this is pretty fast to actually move an entire server across along with all the resources. That's pretty nifty.
It is.
Yeah.
All right, let's go and take a look. I think it might be finished. If I click on refresh again.
Oh, there it is.
Look at that. All the resources are there, and that looks like a healthy resource group to me.
Okay.
Now, if I click on the virtual machine and have a look at the top, it says creating. But if we wait for a couple of seconds, that'll go from creating and to the stage where it's actually set up and ready to go. It is actually a fast virtual machine, and it's a simple case then is taking this this URL here, the public IP address.
Yep.
So let's do that now while we're waiting.
Okay.
I'll copy that. Go back to PowerShell, which is this one here. Now this is the one we used before where we connected remotely, remote PowerShell.
That's right, yep, because it's an NAS server. We don't have an RDP connection to it.
Exactly. And so the only difference here is the server name. So if we go Control V to paste and take out the IP address, keep the name in there only. Okay, let's go back just quickly and make sure this is finished. I'll just refresh this. And once it's finished, we should be able to connect to it. Okay, it looks like it's finished already. Okay, so if we go back to this one, and we should be able to remote PowerShell to it. Actually, first off, we need to do is exit out from the session before, which is going to fail because the machine's not, the session's gone already.
Yep.
That's
the machine
fine.
Stopped. Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to do a new session to the virtual machine created in the target. Give it a couple of seconds for it to connect. It's got to go across to the UK.
That's true.
It's only
a long way.
Well, it's not as far now that we're in America.
That's true.
It would be a very long way.
And there it is,
we're in Australia. So there we go, it's created, it's connected, I should say. And the only other thing we need to do is run line 45 and get a listing of all the directories. And what are we expecting to see?
A Channel 9 directory.
Channel 9 migration directory.
And there it is,
listed in the list of directories. So
right
there it is. Successful migration.
Not only it's up and running
to ARM.
Exactly. Not only it's up and running, but it's the right virtual machine with all the data.
Yep, all the data's there. Everything's exactly the same. The original one is untouched. And look, literally you can it'll go through if you've got multiple virtual machines in the cloud service. Let's say if you've got say up to 50 because there is a limit of 50 virtual machines in the cloud service.
Exactly.
It'll happily copy them across. And not only that, a few other things in the background. It'll have the smarts to work out the best practices for the disks. So if you've got, like, say, 50 virtual machines in the cloud service, and spread across those 50 virtual machines, you've got like, say, more than, say, 40 disks or 40 standard disks.
Yep.
Then it'll have the smarts to create like an extra storage account as per needed, so there's no more than 40 disks.
That's right.
On each storage account.
So you don't exceed the 20,000 IOPS.
Exactly right.
Perfect.
And so literally you can sort of put your source, your details in to begin with, which is the credentials, choose your target source and target subscription, select your VM, hit go, it'll work its way through, do all the 50 VMs, copy all the disks across, it'll create all the stuff on the target. You can walk away, grab dinner, grab a coffee, come back, and it's done it for you.
Beautiful. Now, one last quick question.
Yeah.
ARM to Azure Stack. Can we do that?
We can. We can do that as well.
That does it all. It's a script that does it all.
Exactly. So this is exactly what we do. Is basically we've been doing this for years. This is our specialty. Is the whole migration process of moving stuff around Azure.
Fantastic. So if you guys have any questions or you want to get in touch with us about the script, just the best way is probably Twitter at Stephane Budo at Marc Kean.
Yep.
Is that right?
We'll have our details on this.
Yep, we'll have details at the end of the video. So just shoot us a quick Twitter
Got any
or
questions,
a quick email.
just let us know.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Marc. That was very impressive.
Thank you very much.
And we'll see you later.
Cheers.
See ya.